So we have three scientific concepts that are gonna explain this pretty well. What I have here is the green line, the division, if you will, between the upper world and the lower world. The world of just pure energy, pure light, the spiritual world, and the physical light world that we're in. Starting with the Higgs boson concept, or the Higgs boson particle. It was first postulated back in the 1960s that somehow we're living in a world of E equals mc squared where energy can somehow become mass. And a scientist by the name of Peter Higgs suggested that there has to be some sort of particle. It's a magical particle. It's mystical. It's everywhere all the time, and it can somehow transform energy into mass. And that something like that had to exist. And Peter Higgs, it was called the Higgs boson, and it got nicknamed the God particle. A lot of scientists don't like it because when it was discovered in 2012, people assumed that somehow God was discovered. That's not what it means. It's just that it's a magical particle. Except it sort of does prove the existence of God for those who have imagination, because we are taking energy and flipping it into mass somehow. And the Higgs boson is the thing that does it. The particles acquire mass somehow. Well, somehow this energy takes on physical form. That's pretty godlike if you ask me. And it is a magical, mystical, scientific particle that they discovered existed, but what does it really say? It backs up this equation, of course. Somehow particles take on mass. Okay, well, right alongside that is the magic of number 137 from the book is chapter 4, that there's a scientific number, it's the number 137, that is the odds that electron will absorb a photon. It's actually 1 over 137. Richard Feynman, brilliant physicist, is the one that he said somehow the hand of God wrote that number, because to physicists that's a huge deal. Well, what is that number? Again, it's the odds that an electron can absorb a photon. What it really is a connection between unseen and seen forces, okay, from the spiritual perspective. Somehow this down here takes on light, just as the physical part or particles can take on mass. We have those particles then able to take on light. And it's very important to the spiritual process, as we're about to discuss. And so that's 137, and it's really best thought of as a threshold, sort of like there's a spot where water condenses into ice at 32 degrees or so. There's a spot, a threshold, where all this stuff starts to condense into this. Ending with the idea of string theory and what's known as Planck Length, or Planck Length, after the Max Planck, who said that knowledge is a metaphysical belief. Planck Length is 1.616.255 followed by 35 zeros. I got tired writing a bunch of zeros of a meter, okay? And that's the length in which size stops existing. It poofs into, according to string theorists, at this point it becomes energy. It's indifferentiated, really. And on that level, Planck length, it no longer does physical matter. And at this point, the physical beings are now spiritual beings again, okay? Because we could get so small that which we know as flesh disappears into nothing but pure energy, okay? And all of us are living this all the time. It's just that we are scaled up from this. Even though we are these spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we see the flesh, we're still a part of the string theory, the Planck length, magic of 137, and Higgs boson, and all that. All of those things fit into this little diagram, okay? And it's really interesting science, and they're trying to figure out the physics of things. But it really doesn't get you that far if you don't flip into the spiritual principles, and if you don't have the imagination to see it. In Hebrews it says, faith is the evidence of things unseen. I could have just described all this to you, and like we talked about last week, prophets can tell you directly that you are God, as Jesus did, right? Or Buddha, who said, you're Buddha too. They all say the same thing. We're all one. That's like a fundamental spiritual concept. Does it look like we're all one? Because y'all look different than me. Lucky for you. We're different, but we're the same. That's this again. Different manifestations of the same thing. Well, you got to have the imagination to see it. And there you go with the science backing that up. Okay? So, how do we make this applicable? How do we make it useful for us? How can we then see this? And so we can operate in a world where we know, like if one of these things dies, it just goes back to this. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Jesus says you get dissolved into your own root. The abstract principle of metaphysics, the first principle is we come from this place. The Tao says the Tao is the mother of 10,000 things. This is the world. This is the world of illusion, as Einstein and so many others have said. This is the world of the dream. We're in it right now. People who only see that only see that. You can't force imagination on people. But if you can see it using some of these physics concepts, especially equals mc squared, you can say, oh, okay, maybe the first principle, I'm coming from somewhere else. Of course you are. All of spirituality is learning how to access that source. And that's how we make it functional. It's how we become the best version of ourselves. A couple videos ago, I talked about you can get a brand new lawnmower, but it won't do nothing if you don't get the right fuel in it. And if you put orange juice in the motor, why would you do that? In the engine, you know what I'm talking about. If you put the wrong fluid in there, it's not going to work very well, okay? You have a body. If you put the wrong fluid in there, it ain't going to work very well. We're beings of light. If we put this energy in there, it's going to work to the best of its ability. And that's the spiritual process. We should strive to integrate the higher and the lower selves. The source, which you are, know ye not ye are gods, to integrate that into the physical world is how you can be your best possible self, okay? So, all spiritual teachings are about this. How can we access this? Down here, this is the world of minds going blah, 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 argue this and that, you're right, you're wrong, I'm wrong, you're right, you're better than me, you're worse than me, you're different than me, and all that kind of stuff, on and on and on, okay? That's the world of the human ego that only sees the world of flesh. And yet all of us have access to this world because we come from this world. It's the same as this world. We're living it right now. We're just slowed down. We're just condensed. The ability to see that, that's called faith, right? And here comes the combination lock. How do we experience this? Again, complex science. You could go down lots of rabbit holes studying this stuff. You don't have to do it much more than what I did if you can already see it, okay? This world comes from this world. It's that simple. So what's the combination lock? How do you make this your best possible self? Here's the simplest of spiritual concepts to gain access to this world, and you need know nothing else, really. As long as you're open to the idea that you have access to this wonderful, as the Tao says, a bottomless source of energy, okay, in which you could go forever in its depth by thinking of two letters here. I wrote them small on purpose so you couldn't quite see it, okay? D and I. That's all you gotta remember, those two words, D and I, and they work together like a lock and key. Desire and intention. All spiritual principles can be boiled down to those two concepts, really simple. Because this drawing right here, if you stay in this world and you're only about this world and you're only seeking things in this world, you're gonna get this world. It's a mirror, the world will reflect that back to you. If your desire is to be king of this world, that's all you're going to seek. And if your desire is to help other people only in this world, that's as far as you'll be able to go, okay? And all forms of physical desire will keep you stuck below the line. But if you have a desire that's outside the self to come to know, well, maybe this is true. Maybe Einstein knows what he's talking about, that it's all energy. And all this stuff over here, which is very specifically describing us as energy beings, not physical beings. If you want to know what's behind all of that, you have to have the desire. Here's where golden rule, really the number one golden rule, is seek and you'll find. Boom. So simple. The idea that I might be a spiritual self, it's a simple idea, but it's hard to access. Well, how do you access that? Seek, and you will find. There we go. That means it's going to come to you. That's if you hold on to the desire. What if you stop that desire? What if you give up on it because it's tough? Well, every time I lose my car keys and I give up on them, I don't find them, right? If you care about something enough, you'll study it till you get good at it. So first, that's the desire. Second, you have an intention involved too. Why do you have this desire? Because the better I access this, the better my lawnmower is going to run, or the better my golf game is going to be, or maybe I'll get elected president and all that stuff. Or what if your desire is the intention? I should say your intention is to share this with everybody. What if your intention is to bring all this to earth, as the Tao says, can you play the feminine role and bring the Tao to earth? Or the Lord's Prayer, on earth as is in heaven. If your intention is so that everyone down here can do this too, that's magic, okay? If it's for selfish reasons, it's still ego. And so these two things go hand in hand. You could go ID, DI, doesn't matter. Desire and intention. And that's why it was Jesus' only two commandments in Matthew 22, 37, 39. when asked about the most important commandments, he doesn't say, you people down here don't kill each other, right? That's bad. Killing's bad. Or don't eat birds. Or give away your money or get more money. He didn't talk about that. Or play football games well. He doesn't give physical world advice. Almost never. He gives spiritual world advice because he knows he comes from this place. This is the dude that said, if your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light. If you have a singular desire to come to know who you really are, your whole body will be filled with this light. And now you're going to push that lawnmower well. You're going to be the best possible variation of yourself. Okay? All because you access that light. So, Matthew 22, 37 through 39 says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Not just occasionally. Not just when things go well. All the time, always, nonstop. Remember, it's a lock and key. These go together. That means if you'd like to wake up, you better trust everything that's happening. Relative to you. That's a big deal. A whole bunch of people are trying to figure out other people's stuff. That's hard. And you can try that. And there's a huge role for compassion there. And I do care about intentionality. I do care about my desire to get this so I can be better for others and vice versa. The better you do it, the more it helps me and vice versa. We're a team after all. Okay? But if I'm sitting over here working on my equation and I'm trying to figure out your equation or trying to help you, I'll probably take my eye off mine. So I have to stay focused on me loving all circumstances with every ounce of my being, with my heart, mind, and soul, loving God, which, by the way, in 1 John, it says God is love. And so therefore, I want to learn how to love everything, all levels, which includes my enemies, which includes adversities. I don't have to understand it because I barely can, but I can trust it. I can love it. Something the heart does quite well. The brain doesn't have the ability, but the heart will do it. Then I must love another as myself. And that's the magic ingredient here. Because it's not enough for just me to do it myself. It's for me to want to help you do it and vice versa again. I'm rooting you on because we're teammates. You should root me on because we're teammates. Okay? And so it's both. Do I want to bring this light into this world? And do I want to do it for my own selfish gain? Or so that everybody can learn how to do it? There's the unity of things, and why right before this, I think it's in Mark, where Jesus says, the Lord is one. Okay? Because the very God he's talking about is the unity aspect of things. Because each one of these beings, including a football, comes from this place. Okay? And the only way to make yourself the best possible version of yourself is to do this very simple concept, coming from all the complex physics, very simple idea. Love everything, love everyone, and then help everyone else love everything and everyone. That might be a little hard to do, but the reward is tremendous.